sports fans? Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the table. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, oh, how I missed all of you, especially while we've had technical difficulties all last week. We're officially back, and it's the best week because we got everything happening up and in sports. We got hockey, baseball, NFL, and NBA action going on for you guys here on the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening. Thanks for making us part of your day. No Chase tonight, however, he will be back tomorrow, and at the best time, because we got a lot of good stuff. Tonight we got NFL Draft Analyst John Vogel is going to be joining us here up and on the program because we need to know what's going on with as far as a lot of these NFL draftees and what we should be expecting of for the up-and-coming season. So I'm going to start getting into it because especially with what we watched last night. I mean, I always love doing this up on Sunday nights to where I'm able to just tune in, watch a football game, and then get, a little bit of some homework in. So last night was the perfect example, in my opinion, of what it looks like about 3 years after a divorce. And you basically witnessed this on the road in Pittsburgh, and you're facing off against a Green Bay legend in Aaron Rodgers. And what we noticed here from this last night is that it was the ex-wife, which is Green Bay, had to deal with Aaron Rodgers for years. And many people were questioning a lot about how Aaron Rodgers, how he was manipulative, how he was trying to basically get his own way. And I mean, I get it. I'm not going to tell you, I wouldn't have done it. They wouldn't have done it. But the fact of the matter is that Aaron Rodgers was kind of coming up to a point where they did not want to be manipulated. And so it feels a lot like Green Bay being the ex-wife where they are no longer manipulated. They ended up getting Jordan Love, young quarterback. And I felt like last night was the prime example of what that looks like. And Aaron Rodgers is like, she got me on that one. Listen, the first half was all really defensive. Okay, the first half really was. However, Tucker Kraft and multiple others, they played a really good game. And then Jordan Love in the second half, consecutive completions, finding Tucker Kraft even more on the field. And that's what really led a lot of just the way that the game rolled on. And the Packers, they're a young team. But you could definitely tell how atrocious, and I've been saying this from the beginning of the year, Pittsburgh's defense, they need to get over that. Defensive-minded stuff, like, the whole defensive philosophy. They're the most paid defensive team, and they look like garbage. And I'm like, what's wrong with trading away a guy like T.J. Watt? You would get multiple first-round picks. You would get an overhaul for it. Instead, you kind of went with your own gut and your own instinct, and you basically re-signed him, and now he's making about upwards of $40 million a year. You really think he honestly literally is worth that much while Myles Garrett is out there getting sacks? I mean, that's money well spent. But we all know Cleveland usually doesn't really do business that often. But my biggest concern about this was with Pittsburgh all throughout the season. You have Tucker Kraft, who scored a couple times. You got Jordan Love, who's on fire, and he's proven to you Green Bay's already moved on 3 years after, and they are not manipulated anymore. And so Green Bay, it's a great time to be a Packer fan. I'm not even talking about the whole Micah Parsons deal, but Jordan Love, they get Christian Watson back. Hopefully Matthew Golden will fix into this offense. But Josh Jacobs, they did a bunch of really good things. And which is why I think Green Bay, I'm not even saying that they're the top team in the NFL, period, because you got Indianapolis. But this is definitely a group that could cause a lot of problems for other teams. And Green Bay, they were physical. They played in well in the second half. And I thought Jordan Love, the way that he was, 29 of 37 with 360 passing yards and 3 tutties. And then you look at exactly with Aaron Rodgers. He didn't even have a turnover, but offensively, I didn't even think that they were that bad. But it was mostly up and on the defense that didn't quite get the offense back out on the field. So I think Green Bay, they are looking like a for-real team, but they are about a couple pieces away. I think they need more of a corner, in my opinion. And I just watched literally the LA Rams address corner earlier. I'll talk a little bit more about that on the tail end. But I felt like Green Bay last night was proving up a few statements. Number one, they're a very young team. They'll be just fine. And even with Micah Parsons, you're getting up some sacks and you're getting at least a lot of pressures. All right, I want to talk about one team that really is up and on fire, and I think they are legit a for-real team, and that's the Indianapolis Colts. Jonathan Taylor, again, I think you should honestly consider him in the MVP talks. I'm not saying that it is for sure going to happen, but you should consider him. I mean, the way that the Colts are playing, this is no joke. And the Colts, I know, even playing the Titans, but last week they played the Chargers and they completely dismantled that whole team. And right now, Daniel Jones, even this past week, 21 of 29, 3 touchdowns, and Jonathan Taylor had 12 carries for over 153 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. He is literally playing in the role of what Saquon Barkley was last year, where he's the one running back up and out of the gate and is giving you exactly what you need. Healthy run game, a healthy offensive line, really good offensive weapons, and all the Colts really needed was a quarterback to end up making everything else work and make it all simplified. What I like about this, and this has been very impactful since the late Jim Irsay ended up passing, but his daughter really has been the focal point of this whole thing. She's vocal. She cares about this team. And honestly, the Colts from top to bottom. Remember the time when there was a lot of rumors they were thinking about moving on from Chris Ballard? A lot of these draft picks have been hitting, and it's worked. And the Colts right now are by far the best team in the AFC. And I don't even think this is a joke. But I do know this. The Colts have yet, in my opinion, to go up against top competition. I know that they even played the Chargers, but the Chargers were definitely injury-riddled. But they have the Kansas City Chiefs. That'll be the next thing that they got to face up. You got to face Jacksonville on the road, because remember how many years it's been since Jacksonville, they've had a win on the road? They got to face them too. But the Colts, I love everything that they're doing about it. Now, they are in the market for a corner. We know that they ended up getting decimated with injuries. I think they could definitely use another pass rusher. Who wouldn't? But I think the Colts from top to bottom on this roster is the most skilled. I think also that a lot of these guys, they're the most protective on both the pass and the rush outside of Denver, and I'll get to them in a bit. But I think the Colts really are the real team in the AFC. I don't even know if there's really any stopping it. But even when you have certain questions about Daniel Jones, I know everybody does, but we saw the Daniel Jones in New York. And the Giants, look, they finally got a franchise quarterback, but there's still a lot of mess to fix up. But the Colts, they needed a quarterback. And since, Andrew Luck had retired. We all went through the whole list. But, I mean, Carson Wentz went 27-7 with the Colts. And then you look at Phillip Rivers. He had a very good season and made it to the playoffs. So all throughout this whole turmoil that they were in for cornerbacks strictly, it's a lot better, it's a lot more fluent, and it's consistent. And that's exactly what you need with a quarterback. You're not asking him to be Mahomes or Burrow or Allen. You're asking him to be, you're asking him to execute plays. You're asking him to control a lot of the situations that happen up on offense. And what's even better about this, and Daniel Jones also knows this in New York. Remember what it was when Saquon Barkley was running the football? The offense looked consistent. And now you got Jonathan Taylor, who's having, I think, arguably an underrated MVP season, running the football well, getting rushing touchdowns. And the Colts, I don't even know if there's anything. There's really no other team to stop them other than Kansas City, in my opinion. But again, I think this is a very good team in the AFC. There's no question in my mind. But let's just wait until that week against Kansas City. Then we can have the real conversation behind it just for this season. Good stuff. Right up around the corner, John Vogel talking a lot about the NFL draft up and coming. Because, listen, lots of shakeups. Brian Kelly's out in LSU. So is the offensive coordinator there. And you're without James Franklin. There's a lot of things I need to know about with these prospects, because I want to know, are they for real, or is there just kind of just been a lot of these shakeups up under the scheme? That's coming up next. Also, even with the firing up in an LSU, what does LSU do now without Brian Kelly? So that's all coming up next here in just a moment. Well, folks, like we said, our partners at Payday Fantasy, we have been up and on fire with a lot of our picks, especially for our showcase, Triple Play Bet, which is where you can look it up on all of our social medias at paydayfantasy.com, your go-to app. That's right. They got their own app now on the Google Play and the App Store, Payday Fantasy now, where you can go in, sign up, pick the player, and pick the projection, whether over or under. Sit back and relax. I'm about to enjoy some delicious cheese pizza, and I'm about to just sit back, relax, see the parlays hit, and get paid with Payday Fantasy. Who wouldn't want that? The best part about it is two things. Number one, you sign up, you get a free $5 entry. You don't even have to put anything in yet. Free $5 entry just for trying the app. What's best about this is when you deposit, use the code SNAKE when signing up, because you get 100% deposit match bonus of up to $100. So that's win-win. Double whammies up from there. Who wouldn't want to get paid more with your prop bets? Check out Payday Fantasy here at paydayfantasy.com. Download the app on Google Play and the App Store. Sign up, pick your player, pick the projection, sit back and get paid with Payday Fantasy. Available on Google Play and the App Store.
Looking for a show with the best takes and opinions? Want a show with the best coverage around the world of sports? Jam-packed with an all-star interview lineup? Then the best place to find it all, sports and entertainment, is right here. Join Jake Silva on the Snake Sports Talk Show, presented by SeatGeek and BetUS. Weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
All right, well, the NFL draft, this past draft, was arguably the most roster-constructed draft that we've had. I'm curious about what this next up-and-coming draft is going to look like, especially with shakeups on college jobs all throughout the week. And Brian Kelly now is another coach that has been fired. But to join us talking about a lot we should expect for the up-and-coming NFL draft, here's John Vogel joining us here on the program. got to say, John, what I evaluated from this past draft, and correct me if I'm wrong for this, I felt like this was the most roster constructed draft for a few reasons, because these weren't just wants for a lot of teams. There are a couple of them that wanted these highly talented players, but I felt like this past draft was all about who do we need on defense? Who can we possibly get on offense, especially offensive line? You can't go wrong with that. That's a need. And then who's a guy that we can spot right there that can be a diamond that nobody even looked at that could really be impactful for some teams. What did you think of this past draft and what we're seeing right now as we're heading into, after tonight, week 9 in the NFL season?
Yeah, first off, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate the invite. I'm sorry I was a little late in my response team. I'm glad I was able to get on here with you and talk some sports. I think first off, what we kind of saw, it was a reflection of the draft previous to it, in the sense that there were a lot of guys that they targeted. So like 6 quarterbacks in the 2024 draft go in the first 12 picks. It was a little bit opposite of that in this class. Quarterback wasn't necessarily a big target point. Some of that had to do with the talent that was available. I think a lot of it also had to do with the need, right? There were these resurrection projects that we're seeing around the NFL with Sam Darnold, now with Daniel Jones, with Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay. It's kind of changed how people are looking at the quarterback position, and they're kind of understanding what some of us, I'm not going to say myself because I really wasn't in this crowd, but as some analysts have said, which is, hey, these quarterbacks are in bad systems. They don't fit what they're trying to ask them to do. You need to put them in the right system with the right setup so they can play to their strengths and not necessarily be the coach's system. The NFL has adjusted really well to that, and that's why we're seeing, the last few years we've seen Lamar Jackson be great. Athletic ability at the quarterback position has kind of become a necessity. It's not just a premium anymore. So the 24 draft was a reflection of the 25 because they said, okay, we filled these needs. We feel really good about our guys we got in 24. So now let's look at the other side of the ball. And I think there were a lot of defensive players that really have stood out in this class. So maybe not great for your fantasy lineups. If you're like a rookie guy in dynasty leagues and stuff, maybe there's not a lot of great options there. But defensively, defenses have gotten better. There's a lot of great rookies that have stepped up across the league. Particularly, the one that pops in my head was from the other night watching Nick Manowari with the Seattle Seahawks on, I think it was Monday Night Football against the Texans. Fantastic. Exactly what we thought he was going to be. So it was really a defensive draft, but I would agree that, we've got these little guys like Harold Fannin has done really well with the Browns in the role that they've asked him to play in. There's several running backs that have kind of popped in different games. Travion Henderson looks really good. Quinshon Judkins with the Browns as well has also been really a phenomenal runner. So, there's been good things. There's been good, roster hits like you kind of pointed to and alluded to. And I think that would be pretty fair. In the last 5-6 years, I can't think of one that had better roster fits, more of them, than the last draft.
I'll tell you what, who's fit in really beautifully, and they're stacked in the receiving core. And you know what I'm talking about, Emeka Egbuka, and the way that Tampa Baker Mayfield, it's like, even with just decimated with injuries, I get that. But to be willingness to fight on, and then you get someone like Emeka Egbuka on top of Tez Johnson and Jalen McMillan, that I just am like, I'm in awe of what he's been able to do. And Ohio State, they've really produced up some very good wide receivers over the last couple of years. So to have somebody to be plugging in and just doing what he's doing right now, like, it's insane what he's doing. And he's my biggest favorite of Offensive Player of the Year as a rookie. Like that I just think it's incredible what he's done.
Yeah, and every broadcast that you watch with the Buccaneers, every single broadcaster hears the same thing and tells you the same thing. Sometimes broadcasters are, they're open to hyperbole, right? Where they'll kind of exaggerate on some things and make it a little more dramatic. But I think when you hear the same thing being said consistently across the broadcast, this guy is a pro's pro. He has come in here. He's taken a leadership role early. He has picked up the game incredibly. They're all saying the same thing, so that tells you something right there that, because I don't necessarily have the time to go through all the beats and, every week and figure out all that different stuff on top of scouting an NFL draft class. But when the broadcasts tell you that, when you keep hearing it over and over and over, every time they play, everybody's got the same thing to say. So he's handled himself extremely well in a room that he's needed to, unexpectedly needed to, because that was a room that we came in the year. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, McMillan from last year was phenomenal. And him and Tez Johnson have both stepped up phenomenally for Baker Mayfield. I think that he's a big reason why that Mayfield's kind of in that conversation right now for MVP.
Absolutely. I did want to tap into this for the up and coming draft because I've been paying attention to it all. I had talked with Brian Smith, especially when it comes to the transfer portal and a lot of these other kids up from in college. One of my biggest things is there's been so many shakeups. I mean, you got James Franklin fired at Penn State. Now we just got Brian Kelly, and I'll talk about that on the tail end. But I'm thinking in the quarterback position this year, there are about 3, possibly 4, that can go this year that I feel like can make a difference, and I feel like some can be projects. I don't think it's a knock on them because where you land matters. But I got to say, though, John, and I don't know if you've evaluated this as closely, but after Brian Kelly getting fired at LSU, Garrett Nussmeier, I felt like going into the year, he was going to be one of the top 5 quarterbacks in this draft that I felt has the arm, has the accuracy, can be able to move in some spots to open up space. But I've watched this LSU offense, and it feels like it's been stagnant a few times. And I'm just kind of like, is that more pertain to the coaching, or is that more of just the offensive play scheme in itself, that it's not kind of clicking? And then, I mean, I'm even watching, too, with Cade Klubnik at Clemson. So how have you evaluated this quarterback class? Because I don't think it's going to be as stacked as it was 2 years ago when we had Caleb, Jaden. How do you kind of evaluate this upcoming year?
Well, so the first thing I think is what we need to look at is the fact that most of these guys that we're talking about being first round top 5 picks right now are probably not coming out this year. Ty Simpson, Fernando Mendoza,
right?
These guys have an extra year of eligibility. And one of the big things that you need to watch in the news cycle and see how it's kind of developing is the Big Ten with this potential $2 billion tech investment that they're about to get into. If they get into this equity tech type deal, if they get this, that's $2 billion being injected into the Big Ten alone. You know that the SEC is already working on a deal like this too, because the Big Ten's talking about it. These two conferences, they have to match each other. So we're looking at potentially $4 to $5 billion going into the NIL market next year. If that happens, which it's my understanding that it is going to happen, you're going to see $10 million quarterbacks next year in the transfer portal. And the reason for that is it's simple. You got to pay first round money to keep these guys from going to the NFL. And if they got, in this case of Ty Simpson, that helps him because all the guys that we've seen be very successful in the NFL as soon as they step on the field as a rookie in the last few years, Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, those are the guys that kind of come to mind. CJ Stroud, even these guys had 20 plus starts. Bo had 40, Jaden had 40. This is an important aspect to understanding what you're looking at post snap. Watching the play develop. The only adjustment that you have to make at that point is adjusting to the speed of the game. And once you make that adjustment, you're ready to roll. And that's why we're seeing these guys already play really well. Until then, you have these systems like you just mentioned Jackson Dart a few minutes ago before I came on. Dart is playing really well. They've simplified the system for him so that he can speed and catch up to the speed of the game. But he's another guy, 30 plus starts in his career.
Yeah.
And he might have been close to 40 if I'm not mistaken. So that's the common theme here for success is a lot of starts in college. So that's going to help these guys when they go back. When you look at the senior class, that's where things this is a weird quarterback class. This is very weird. Carson Beck, the first 5 weeks of the year, was like, oh, he shook off his demons and now he's ready to roll. And now we see him go out and throw 4 interceptions against Louisville at home, loses the game, goes and starts off really poor against Stanford last week. And you're just like, he's got the off the field stuff that he's going to have to answer for. there's a lot there with Beck where I don't know if it's football. I don't know if it's mental. I don't know what it is with him that's keeping him from being consistent. Drew Aller. If I'm Aller, I'm applying for a medical transfer as soon as possible, a medical waiver for that injury, because he needs another year. He needs a year away from James Franklin. So James Franklin has traditionally not developed quarterbacks. That's a whole another tangent we can get into at some other point.
Oh, yeah.
But that's the thing here is like, there's not a real standout in this senior class. The guys that, like when I talk with my friends in the league and stuff, the guy that keeps coming up, I don't think he's a first round pick. I don't think he's day 2 pick, but Diego Pavia has caught the league's attention because of his moxie, his leadership ability. He's absolutely been the cornerstone at Vanderbilt that's flipped that program around. Mm-hmm. And he's a rare type of individual that you can bring in there, even as a third string quarterback, as a developmental guy, that's going to be a good presence in your locker room. Because he just does things the right way. I understand people think he's a little bit, he's a little over the top sometimes. And I think the word they've used is arrogant. Anybody around him will tell you that's not the case. And it's really, it's what your teammates think. That's what really matters at the end of the day. So I don't know how to take this quarterback. I still like Nussmeier. I think that you look at his body of work. The Clemson game stands out to me in particular because he's working from a condensed pocket. He's processing really well. I think what kind of plays into his issue is it's not just the coaching. It's not just the play calling. He's been playing through an ankle injury that he suffered during summer training this year. He also is dealing with a rib injury that he sustained while playing through the ankle injury. And then on top of that, that offensive line, there's 4 new starters there. They were starting 2 freshmen at both tackles against Texas A&M the other night. That's just not sustainable for a quarterback of his type. So I want to see him get healthy. I don't think he'll sit out the rest of the year. I don't think that's in his blood to do. But I want to see him go down to the combine. I want to see him go to the Senior Bowl first. Yeah. And I want to see him play well there. And then I want to see him go to the combine and just show everybody that, hey, I can make the throws. Everything's good. And then I want to see him go to his pro day and just solidify that. And I think he's still in the running to be probably the first round quarterback in this class.
I believe so, because ultimately, like many people I've talked to, a lot of fans, they don't quite understand like the entirety of like what the scouting combine is about. Like ultimately, like we know this, just evaluating strictly the position itself. You go into the Senior Bowl, you got your in-game reps, and then you go into the scouting combine. Now you're basically like, you're now trying to just basically evaluate yourself, your arm accuracy, how you really feel like as far as athletically, can you throw the deep ball? Can you extend plays? All those kinds of things. Because by the time you put those pads on in the NFL, those are a lot of the expectations, especially when you get a lot of these offensive-minded coaches that can see that and then find a way to really kind of tweak some things to make it even better. That's why I love the situation with Jackson Dart. Knowing how Brian Dable works on this, I think he's going to have a very good, bright future. One of my things is, I feel like this draft class more in particular, I feel like is going to be more based upon run and secondary. Because to me, the running back class, John, looks really, really prominent. I mean, you got Justice Haynes in Michigan. You got the young kid, that kid at Washington. Oh, my God. The kid's got unbelievable, like lower body strength, cuts, and just his vision when running the football. And then there's a couple of others I can't think of up to mind. But I feel like this is also back-to-back some prime running back classes right now that I think could really make a difference for some teams. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the deepest running back classes I've seen. Even if a lot of the juniors go back, the senior class itself is extraordinary. Nick Singleton at Penn State. You mentioned Jonah Coleman's one of my favorites. Dean Connors at Houston. Yep. All these guys are NFL guys. And there's an extensive list that we could go into that would take up the rest of your show. I'm going to give you the grace and not do that. But the running back class is great. You got Jeremiah Love at Notre Dame, who's potentially coming out this year. And I mean, he's Bijan Robinson and Adrian Peterson's body. Like that's who he is. He's a phenomenal player. The running class is great. And then I don't like to use the term generational because I think that's something that's used a lot in our media right now, especially in draft media. It's like every year you've got guys, draft analysts on X and Twitter and on the websites and stuff. There's 5 guys in this class that are generational, and it's like, no, dude, these are guys that come around like once every 25 years, right? Mm-hmm. And so you're lucky if you have a generational prospect every couple of years, Yeah. Mm-hmm. And when you look at Caleb Downs, this might be a generational safety prospect. I mean,
I agree.
The guy does everything, man. One of the things that I saw, I think somebody had responded to something I said about him. And they said, well, I feel like he's not rangy enough. And I was like, dude, did you see him returning punts at Alabama as a freshman? When's the last time you can think of a safety that returned punts?
Right.
You can't. It doesn't happen. If you watch the 2025 tape exclusively and make your assessment on Downs, you're going to probably think that because he's not playing that role in this defense. Right. He's playing more of a box safety hybrid linebacker role. This guy's 6'1", 205, and he plays like he's 240.
Yeah.
He's got insane physical, brute raw strength. He's a great athlete. I don't think he tests. I'd love to see him. I don't think it happens. But no, this guy is off the charts, unbelievable. So there's a bunch of good corners too in this class. I think that the defensive line group is really good as well. Ruben Bain, the names escape me. The guy at Penn State right now.
Yep.
33. He's really good too. Zane Durant's the other one. He's a defensive lineman on the team. But there's a bunch of great edge rushers in this class as well. Tyreek Sapp at Florida looks like he's probably a guy. So Zion Young at Missouri. So there's going to be I think you'll see a lot of defensive linemen come off the board early. You'll see a couple offensive linemen in there. Downs will come off early, and maybe a couple running backs. And then after that, chaos. It's going to be chaos.
I feel like, even when I watch, the Denver and Dallas game, is that for Dallas, I'm not even going to pick on him. I feel like this year's not their year. However, the picks that they did get back from the Micah trade, you could use that to end up getting a lot of these defensive guys that are capable first and second rounders, and they'll be very impactful. And especially when you need a defensive run stopper, like you need one to just be able to stop the run up on the front, and you need somebody to be able to handle the man-to-man corner type of tasks, especially when that kind of takes some heat off of your secondary from the safeties, because they'll play one of two things. They'll be physical, or they'll be the guy in the free to basically be the spotter of whomever is coming at him left and right. So, I feel like, even with offensive playmakers, I mean, we had a couple of them come out of this past draft. I know Trey Harris is going to have a very good upbringing in the Chargers in the second round. I felt like, Houston, they got very good ones with Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins. Like, are we expecting some offensive firepower a little bit? I mean, it may not be as great on tight ends. There are a couple good ones in this draft. But what do you think about just the offensive firepower? Like, there's going to be some teams that are going to want to upgrade up on that.
Yeah, it's not a great wide receiver class. I know that there's several that are being pushed up. I think Cardinal Tate's probably for real at Ohio State.
Yep.
Jordan Tyson is probably going to be more of your second round guy just because, he's not a guy that's going to win one-on-one. You have to scheme him open. He's a Deebo Samuel type player. When you kind of get outside of that, you're kind of looking, everybody's kind of got holes in their game that concern you as a wide receiver. So it's not a great class for that. Stowers, I think, is a good tight end. Eli Stowers at Vanderbilt, he might be the best one in this group. And I know that a lot of people consider him more of an H-back. So he'll be a Dalton Kincaid type player at the next level. There's going to be role players that are going to be in this class at those positions, but I don't think that there's going to be a lot of, star power, like can't miss fantasy guys that are going to put up a lot of stats. I think you're going to see a lot of productive role players that can develop, into really good starters. But nobody really stands out to me outside of Tate. I think Tate is probably going to be a really good one. Everybody else is going to have to kind of work into their roles. It's going to take them some time to adjust. And, that's just how the dice rolls sometimes. I think that I've talked about this theory with the wide receiver position, which is Odell's catch set the wide receiver position on fire. That Sunday night catch in 2015, if you remember that and you think about the wide receiver classes that were coming out back then, you fast forward 3 years and you think three years is those guys leaving high school, going to college, playing 3 years. And for the next 3 years after that, 2019, 2020, 2021, what do we hear every year? This is the most insane wide receiver class I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And that's what it was, is a lot of these high school kids didn't want to play wide receiver until they saw Odell do that. And now they want to play wide receiver. So now we're developing wide receivers, right? Yep. So now that fatigue is kind of set in, the market's resetting. And so it'll probably be another year when we get Jeremiah Smith in the next class in 27. Ryan Williams will probably be up there. We got a really good one, Dekedrian Moore and Malachi Toney in 28 or 29, whatever that is. This is just going to be the break year for wide receiver, where it's not going to be as deep, and you're going to see a lot more people targeting veteran talent.
Yeah, no, 100%. And especially for teams that we know that are deficient on defense, they're going to need to add some guys up on there that could really be explosive. But even if you get just those two up and in particular, maybe even one more up from there. And especially when you got an offense that is set, that is looking for something extra, that could often really help out for just a complete type of offensive, just roster from top to bottom. Like that. It's that's the team that we know capable of scoring up at least 25 plus points a game. So that's ultimately
Jay, if you get into this all season and you're 2 or 3 players away from being able to make a run, you're going to be in really good shape with this class, because you're going to have the guys that you're going to be able to fill in that you can't get in free agency. I do want to go back to the Cowboys real quick, because you brought them up, and the Cowboys have one of the most puzzling roster, strategies I've ever seen.
Yes.
With the quarterback, contract. There was talk of them trading him in the offseason. That was legitimate. That just nobody has the cap space to take on, $60 million a year. And even if you offset some of that, it is a lot, of money to put into one guy. And then, you turn around, you'd say you can't pay Micah Parsons. Now that pick, you hope you get a good pick back, but right now you're looking like you might be picking 32 with that. Not making any prediction here, but I'm just saying that if you look at the records, it's them and the Colts. They're the best teams in football right now. So you could be picking 32 there. So you hope you can get a good guy there. It's not going to be, you're not getting a Micah Parsons, but you're hoping that you can get somebody there. But then you trade Micah Parsons and you turn around, you sign Deron Bland to a $26 million a year deal, which I get it. Deron Bland, great slot corner, right? But you pointed out that the boundary doesn't look good, right? Deron can't play the boundary very well.
Nope.
That he's pretty much exclusively a slot guy. And you said you couldn't pay Micah because he'd missed some games. He'd missed 5 games in his career?
Yep.
Deron just missed all of last year. Jake, make it make sense to me. I don't see the roster construct. So yeah, in theory, you have extra picks. You can build the roster up the right way. But with some of the decisions that you've made already, I that's a project that I wouldn't want to touch.
And that's the thing about it is because ultimately what's off the table is arc spanning. I don't even want to hear the conversation ever again. You got a franchise quarterback. Dak looks rejuvenated and he looks to be your franchise guy. Stick with that. The only thing about it is you need to have the ability to stop the run. You got Kenny Clark, but you're going to need somebody next to him to be that next brutal force up front that will be your future, because you already lost to Marcus Lawrence and you lost Micah Parsons. So you need to have somebody up from on there. I think Donovan Ezraku is a nice piece, but he is going to need more development until he is comfortable with his own. But even with that, the corners, everybody's just cooking up on these corners. And that's where I'm just because for me, originally what I thought of that kid Muhammad from Texas. But then I thought of, there's a couple more I wasn't even thinking about that can be very impactful. But if you get those guys, I felt to me, I like Trayvon Diggs, but there's even a part of me that I'm feeling you could get some sort of value for him, because ultimately you need to really reconstruct this whole defense. So if you get something for him, maybe even if you get a second and possibly a third rounder, you are in the middle of the pack. where you can get more impactful guys. So that was where I was with them. But it's going to be interesting, though, the up-and-coming draft. But I will say this, my last thing. Is it safe for me to say, because I've already stamped my mark on this. When he's ready, John Mateer, number 1 overall. I think he really I just look at Herbert and Bo Nix basically form together. Accurate up on passes, can basically scramble more outside to create space. But he's also somebody, and I know he came back from an injury. I'm not going to put that up on him. But I do think the accuracy, and I think the field of vision for him seems a lot like those 2 quarterbacks I mentioned. I don't think he'll have the athletic ability close to a Herbert, but close to along the lines. I think he's able to do things that I thought Arch Manning would have done this year. And I'm like, I have to really reconsider about that. What do you think?
It's tough because the system that he runs is really hard to evaluate.
Yeah.
There's a lot of designed quarterback runs. They use him a lot in quarterback power. And sometimes he shows you a flash and you're like, maybe this guy is a really good athlete. He's got great lateral ability. His jump cut is really something else. It's the rest of the game, I think, that worries me, Jake. Did he rush himself back from this injury? Is that going to provide a long-term consequence? Because those last 4 or 5 throws against Ole Miss, when he got up in the 40-45 attempt range, were pitiful.
Oh, yeah.
Again, 1 game, right? And not counting the Texas game. So 2 games since he's been back. So I wonder if he rushed himself back. I don't want to necessarily evaluate that, because for the same reason that I don't want to take away from what, Garrett Nussmeier can do with, his ability to operate from the pocket. He's hurt. He's playing through it. I want to give him credit for that. And I want to look at the stuff that he does really well and say, yeah, when he's healthy, this is what he looks like. So I want to do the same for Mateer. I'm not sure if I'm in on him even being a first-round pick yet. And that's just because of those questions. It's very difficult to evaluate with that system.
Yeah.
It's kind of a pistol. It's a heavy pistol, heavy RPO kind of offense. It's not something you see a lot in the NFL. Sometimes they have some plays that develop down the field. He does flash. But he's probably a year away. He probably comes back next year, especially if this money. I'm telling you, Jake, this is the biggest story that if you're following college football, you need to be paying attention to, because if this happens, the NIL market is going to go absolutely bonkers, and it's going to be a lot more profitable for a lot of these guys to stay in college as opposed to going to the NFL, and they will do that. When you think about a $2 billion deal, the Big Ten's 18 schools?
Yep.
You split that 18 ways, it's practically an NFL salary cap.
Yeah,
they're going to spend NFL money, and that's what we're looking at potentially in college football. And so if that happens, man, that's the story of the year. And I'm really surprised not a lot more people are paying that much attention to it, and kind of is almost like a hushed conversation. But that's what everybody really needs to pay attention to, because that's what's going to tell us how many underclassmen will enter this class if these deals go through. That's the big question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I keep up with a lot of my reliable resources, because my biggest thing is that I'm big on experience. I'm big on reps, and I'm all like, again, these players got to get paid. And I get that. And I know that that's a challenging thing for a lot of these coaches, but ultimately the game plan's never changed. Get your production up and out on the field. Ultimately you are going to be an NFL draft prospect. But the fact of the matter is, you're coming to a lot of these programs, especially when you're in the bigger schools like Bama and Ohio State and, all these other places. But ultimately, you're working towards your own draft stock for these other teams that, when you get put into that position, there's going to be a lot more higher expectation. But if they get their mind right on it, and at the same time, they've learned from what they got up in college, this is why the NFL is just continuing to be king every single year. And it's just because of things like that. John, I appreciate you for coming on by, man. One of my most reliable guys I'm going to have to look towards when we get ready to go back into Indianapolis. Because, listen, people have been telling me all the time. They're like, Jake, you need to get your butt down here in Indianapolis. Seriously, just go watch a combine. You'll be right there closest with the coaches. You get a chance to see these guys in action and just really being in, even up and into your role where you're analyzing these guys. You're kind of thinking, what's the strength? What's a little bit of the tendencies they can work on? Those little things, because that's where, okay, now I know how to evaluate that player and whether or not he will be impactful and what his career will look like in the future. So, John, appreciate you for coming on by, man. Great, great stuff from you. Hope to have you back up on here soon as we get closer to the next draft.
Thanks, Jake. Let me throw one thing in here real quick about Indianapolis. It's for not just for you, anybody that might be listening that wants to check it out. I can't recommend it enough. And even if you don't get a media credential, it's absolutely worth the week to go there because most of the action doesn't happen inside the media room or where you can get a media credential. Most of the action is happening in the interviews. That's where you get some of your intel. Now, it's been in Indianapolis that I've made some of my best friends in the industry. Bar side conversations with guys that you never thought you'd be having a bar side conversation with, and then walking away and keeping in touch afterwards because that conversation was so important and valuable to each one of you. It's a beautiful thing. Football brings us all together. It separates it takes all the things that separates us out of the equation, and we all come together for this sport. And there's no better place than Indianapolis where you see it in action every single day. Can't recommend it enough. Even if you just hang out in downtown and hit some bars, and dude, it's awesome. You won't believe the people that you run into and that you talk to, and the potential friends that you make.
Absolutely, man. And I got so many really good close friends, even up and into this industry, man. And I'm always so delighted to even just know more about it because, again, these are going to be guys that I'm like, initially I will text and say, what is this guy that I need to know in order for me to understand what some teams could be looking up at, that whole full evaluation. But yeah, it's a fun time. Definitely got to make my trip out there. Appreciate you, John, for coming on by, man. Enjoy the rest of the week, and we will definitely see you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jake.
Absolutely. There you go. Player evaluations. It never gets old, and it's fun. It really is. I mean, yeah, the generational talent, I don't tend to use it a whole lot myself either because I just think it's so blown up out of proportion. But, yeah, it's just incredible. It's a fun time up out there. Going to be back. We're going to take a break here onto the show.
Want to find your seat for the event of your choice but can't get one that fits your desire or your budget? Well, my friends, SeatGeek has you covered. SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show. With a list of over hundreds of events to choose from, SeatGeek will assure you that you won't miss your seat with the amazing deal of your choice at the most affordable price. Whether it's looking for your best seat in the house of your favorite sports team, finding live concerts that get you closer to your favorite artist, or enjoying your spot at your favorite live shows, comedies, and more, SeatGeek has it all just for you. Go online to SeatGeek.com or download the app on your mobile device through Google Play and the App Store. And as a special offer before checkout, use promo code SNAKESPORTS and save yourself $20 off of your purchase of your first ticket and experience why SeatGeek is the most trusted ticketing app for your next event. Remember, that's SeatGeek.com and download the app on your phone with promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off and find your seat with SeatGeek.
Game 3 tonight. I'm excited. Dodgers, Blue Jays. Lots to look forward to here tonight. I'm excited for this World Series. I'll talk a little bit more about that after this, but I definitely wanted to talk about here in where I currently live up in Denver, Colorado, because yesterday I watched the Denver Broncos and they put on an absolute masterclass against arguably the number one best offense in the league in the Dallas Cowboys. Can't say the same about their defense. So, Denver is 6-2 now, and I think this is a good shape for them. But there are a few things that I worried and I concerned about with the Denver Broncos. But Bo Nix looked really impressive, 19 of 29, 247 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. So the one thing that I would describe what the Denver's offense looked like was a lot equivalent to a diesel engine. Okay, anybody that's ever ran a diesel truck and how you have to literally, calibrate the engine where you got to puff out all that smoke outside of the muffler. That's what I felt like the Denver offense really reminded me of, because there were times, and I'm not even asking Denver to immediately start a game where they got to immediately be up in 4th gear, but I would expect a smooth, fluent, and consistent offense. And the game against the Giants, though, the week before this, they didn't score at all in 3 quarters. They looked completely out of sync. The defensive front was getting to them. And Jackson Dart was kind of moving around left and right. And Bo Nix, all of a sudden, lightning in a bottle, puts up 33 points. And Denver, they comfortably right now look like a team that I want to believe in. That is a really good team, even in the AFC West. Defensively, I love. But the offense just has to show for itself. And you got to, and listen, Bo Nix is not going to be that kind that's a specialty quarterback like Herbert or Mahomes or Burrow or even Josh Allen. You're going to ask Bo Nix to just get some quick things started. I do agree, though, that there were points in the game where I felt like small connections, even those little sweep routes that they kept on running, were driving me crazy. And I've said that time and time again. And that's where I think Denver's offense, that's where you really have to stretch the field. You have to stretch the field. And you watch a lot of these other quarterbacks. I watched Jordan Love last night stretch the field. I watched, even with Aaron Rodgers, stretch the field. That's where I think, Bo Nix has the capability to do so. But if you're not stretching the field and moving forward, even with these jet sweep plays, these bubble routes, they're good and all when you're trying to get something started as far as your completions. But you ultimately, in tough games, especially in the second half, you really got to turn it up. And I felt like the run game was very effective. I felt like there were times where Denver's defense was giving hell to Dak Prescott. And even after the way that the game went, 44-24, that Denver defense is legit. Now, they are going to be without PS2 for about 4 to 6 weeks. That's not going to be simple. But Denver in first place right now. You can enjoy it while it lasts. But ultimately, you got to play the Chargers again the second time. You got to play Kansas City. You got to play even in that Colts game, like there was a time where they really had to be playing their best. And that's where you got to really ask the offense. Ground game can be working. J.K. Dobbins looks really good. But that's where I think for Denver, you really got to consider that. You got to consider that down the stretch, because that initially will come back to hit you at some point. All right, so the latest news, let's get into it. So Brian Kelly is out in LSU, and so is the offensive coordinator for the Tigers. We've already had this discussion itself with, James Franklin. And Brian Kelly, since he joined LSU, looked a lot like a wonky fit. And Brian Kelly, since he's been there in 4 seasons, is 34-14, but in SEC play, that's where it really ticked off LSU and everybody that was up and in there in that program. And what's worse about this is Garrett Nussmeier had so many different, opportunities, and not to mention just his skill and his build. And when you get someone like Brian Kelly, who I feel like feels a lot like a defensive-minded coach, is more about running the football more often and trying to be physical, and you're talking about, even in his play time in Notre Dame, like there was not a whole lot of skill players up and into wide receiving core. There was not even a great, I shouldn't say there was an athletic quarterback known as Everett Goldston. Okay, remember that guy? Goldston was an interesting quarterback, and he felt a lot like a Terrell Pryor, in my opinion. He could run the football. He could throw accurately. That was the last time you even saw that with Brian Kelly. But in the SEC, it's a completely different, it's a different type of skill play. Like you need to figure out skill players. Even from the time when he had Jaden Daniels out of ASU, and when you have Malik Neighbors, you had Brian Thomas, and even the late wide receiver Kyron Lacey. Like you need to have skill players up and into the positions. And that's where in the SEC, it's going to require you to be skillful. It's going to require you to have a very good defense. LSU's defense is really good. Okay, let's not get that confused. It's really good. But offensively, at times, it just felt like they should be putting up more points than they are. And it's like, what are they doing? And at the same time, you're watching how the run game's been playing. You've been watching how Garrett Nussmeier, when it comes to just throws and decisions, you've been seeing all that. And I felt like LSU, and I mean, now the position's open. Are we going to expect Ed Orgeron to come back to LSU? Like, I think Brian Kelly, I think what's hard about this is, and the same thing that we discussed about James Franklin, is James Franklin, you knew he's all about run, physical play, and is more about protecting the football. But it's not the same, especially when it comes to skill players in the wide receiving position. When Tyler Warren ended up leaving, what did Penn State really have even up after that? They did get some wide receivers, but still, I mean, there is high expectations in college football. And we just discussed this with John Vogel, is that the NIL money is going to continuously get larger. You need to have GMs, especially up and into these programs. And you ultimately got to have the right coaches that are there that understand this, because the NIL is going to continue to grow. Players are going to want to demand playing time. And that's all the rest that's going to happen, like overall. Like, listen, Ohio State, even for the Big Ten, for as physical as they are, Jeremiah Smith, the Tate kid, and, even when you got Julian Sayin, they got some really good skilled players. They've had a bunch of skilled players in the last few years, from Marvin Harrison, Chris Olave, and Jackson Smith-Njigba, and now Emeka Egbuka. So I just think, with some of these wonky fits, like James Franklin, you knew the time was over. You weren't beating top 10 teams, let alone top 5 teams. And LSU, you're not competing as heavily as you think that you are, especially against Texas A&M. You got completely roundhouse. So that's where I think for LSU, it just hit a trigger. And at that point, it just wasn't going to work out. It wasn't going to work out at all. And now you look at, like, again, I think James Franklin, in my opinion, you may think it's a step down, but I think this is honestly this is honestly momentum. You can honestly go into Oklahoma State. I mean, they need a help in their program. I mean, for the years that Mike Gundy has been there, there's really been not a whole lot of changes. And James Franklin, this is no step back. Play in the Big 12 and figure out your momentum. And then that way, then you'll be able to get back into these big boy jobs. Brian Kelly, most people think, and I thought I saw a projection earlier, is that they thought Penn State would be a fit. But the thing about it is, Penn State, it would only just be another replication of Notre Dame, because physical, really good defensive edge rushers, you got very good corners, and then you'll be focusing more up and on the run game. And again, you will be in the position like what you were in LSU, because not a ton of skill receivers. Your quarterback now, with Drew Aller being hurt now for the entirety of the year, I don't know if that could potentially be up in a fit, but what do I know? It could be interesting. But I just think that the shifting in the college football realm has just really taken a different toll. And now you're watching Brian Kelly, James Franklin. I mean, look, Mike Gundy had to go, but there's just a lot of different momentum shifts. And I don't even know how long that's going to end up lasting and how long you could possibly keep up with it. But I just think for many of the reasons, okay, for many of the reasons, get at least the best coach that you know that is keeping up with the times. The other thing is you got to be able to attack up and into the transfer portal only for the positions that you know you need and the guys that will work, especially with the kind of structure you're trying to put together. So that's one of the biggest takeaways, I'd say, especially after I heard the news from Brian Kelly. I was like, wow, LSU, they just said bye-bye. And they're paying out over, even after they let him go and the offensive coordinator go, almost upwards of $100 million. Like, what the hell? Like, sometimes I just like a lot of the money that it's going towards is just it shocks me. It's crazy. But LSU, SEC, there's a lot of high expectations. I mean, especially when you're watching Alabama be back up into the top 5 ranks, and then you're watching Texas A&M, who's literally had the greatest start in a long time. They're playing well, and then you're watching the physicality of the Big Ten. There's no room for excuses and no room for play like this. So again, I think Brian Kelly will get a job again, but it's going to take at least the program in which he can match with. And maybe he can work in Penn State. I don't know. So, yeah. Sad, but listen, these things happen. These things happen. But ultimately, you got to figure out what your identity is, what you're trying to do, especially in a conference you play in. Because that's, especially when you're getting roundhoused against Texas A&M, that ain't going to roll. I mean, imagine when you're playing Diego Pavia in Vanderbilt. You're playing against South Carolina with Lenore Sellers. That's not going to fly well. So, yeah, crazy. Absolute, utter craziness in college football. But I love it. I am absolutely all here for it. All righty, folks, that's going to do it here for me tonight on the Snake Sports Talk Show. Appreciate everything for joining us. And thank you to John Vogel, the draft analysis guy in the NFL. Absolutely loved it. They killed it for the interview. Appreciate him for stopping on by. I was really curious when it came to all of the shakeups in college football and what that's going to do for a lot of these builds. But I got a lot of answers up and out of that, and I absolutely appreciate him for that. Appreciate it for all of you guys stopping by. By the way, tomorrow, it's going to be a fun one. Former defensive player Chris Hovan is joining us here up and onto the program, talking Vikings, talking Bucks, talking a lot about the defensive front. It's going to be a lot of fun. Tune in here tomorrow night at the same time here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. Chase will be back with us as well, guys. Enjoy tonight. Enjoy the World Series of Game 3. Blue Jays, Dodgers. And also Monday Night Football, Kansas City Chiefs, Washington Commanders, NHL action, NBA action. It is stacked on a Monday. Take care, everyone. We'll see you on tomorrow night.